Sure, Michael, what Ashley was saying there, you can actually see the action and reaction in Walmart's own statements. This is language from Walmart in 2020. The chief executive wrote that, quote, slavery, lynching, and the concept of separate or equal have morphed into a set of systems today that are all too often unjust. Compare that to the company's statement today, quote, we are willing to change alongside our associates and customers who represent all of America. That's a shift right there.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. I mean, I'm a equality of opportunity kind of guy. And I think in an ideal world, people should rise and fall based on their merits, based on their tenacity, their hard work, their natural talents. I just don't know, as someone who owns a business, if I'm looking at hiring people, and we have quite a few people we've hired and we're hiring even more as we're growing. And I'm not looking necessarily at a person's race. I want to look at who's the best person. And obviously, we're going to look at Black people, women, Hispanics, white, whatever the case may be, because skills are most important to us. And I think in the business world, you want people who can do a great job so that you can maintain your capital market position for your investors and also serve your consumers. So I don't know what the end result of this ultimately is, but I think if you're giving everybody an equal opportunity for a position, for a role to do the job, and you're selecting people based on that solely, then I think that's pretty fair.
Mr. Bongino, Patrick Crucius was white, is that correct?
Sir, I have no idea of I don't know his parentage.
He was white.
Again, I don't know why you're making a racial thing.
Reclaiming my time.
Yeah.
Because Black lives matter, sir.
Yeah, all lives matter, sir. Every single life matters. White, Black, Asian,
Professor Butler.
Else.
Commonly said on this channel, like this is a quote from Thomas Sowell that I always like to reference, but affirmative action is racism under new management. And as you saw from the intro, you saw Hakeem Jeffries attempt to create a race narrative around like police reform and all this stuff. And I talk about police reform a lot. Roland Fryer, who was a Harvard economist, brought out a study that a lot of liberal academics condemned him for bringing out because it destroyed this narrative that the left like to run about police bias in policing, and that there was no bias that he was able to prove between how police treats Black criminals versus white criminals. And I was like, duh, like it's so obvious, right? And he talks about, Roland Fryer, the economist that I speak about, he talks about how he got death threats. He had to get a policeman to bodyguard him and his family because of threats of violence that were against his life, because he decided to publish this study that just debunked this whole narrative about police brutality. Police treats Black criminals different from white criminals. And this is the idea of DEI that I think many people fight against. If you have always believed that everyone should play by the same rules and be judged by the same standards, that would have gotten you labeled a radical 60 years ago, a liberal 30 years ago, and a racist today. Wow. Wow. That's the reality of DEI. It will label you a racist today if you believe that two people, regardless of their skin color, regardless of their background, the rules should apply the same to them. Hey, we should be putting people in college based on merit, not on skin color. There's only a 6%, 5% representation in Ivy League colleges as well. There's 30% of Black. No, it just shows that the Black community don't have the ability to be representative, right? Black community is overrepresented in sports. We don't hear no DEI bandwagoning or messaging. If it's good, if DEI is good for college admissions to the Ivy League college, why isn't DEI good for the NBA and all these sports leagues that's majority Black? Because DEI, and this is why I said DEI is racism under new management, is just anti-whiteism. That's it. Now it's anti-Asianism, because Asians are heavily discriminated against due to DEI programs. And another highlight that I want to highlight here, breaking. The New York Times and Business killed stories at the 11th hour. Same pattern you're seeing with academia, right? And this is their false dichotomy of building consensus. When a study is going to come out that debunks a narrative that they want perpetrated in society, they kill it. They don't want to bring attention to the story. They don't want to give the story any kind of legitimacy or oxygen, because it'll debunk their whole narrative that they've spent years and centuries cooking up. Covering new research on the DEI pathology and its negative psychological impact. I highlight some of the psychological impacts of DEI is that it gives Black people, black children a lower sense of self, lower self-esteem, lower sense of self-determinism. The ability, you feel more helpless when you're exposed to like critical race theory and all this. That's why I said critical race theory and the kind of ideological concept that it swims in is garbage. Studies show that certain DEI practices increase hostility and authoritarian tendencies and arguing with in agreement with extreme rhetoric. Duh. Water is wet, people. And it's obvious to see. All you have to do is look at the people who practice DEI, critical race theory, anti-racism. They're some of the most racist.
I'd also just like to take a personal note of privilege to say, please keep Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s name out of your mouths. Yes. Your perversion of his words and his mission, when his children have asked you to stop invoking his name and perverting his work when he was a proud and unapologetic black man fighting for equality for black Americans and all marginalized people. So you all are entitled to your opinions, but not a denial of the facts. But I'm not surprised that you would deny American history. A colleague across the aisle invoked the phrase of, we must do everything to stop government-sponsored oppression. Well, I've just enumerated numerous examples, which is exactly why we have legislation and an executive order to reverse this harm. And that is why I'm committed to opposing this bill and urge my colleagues to do the same.
I thank my colleague, and I appreciate my Democrat colleague for exemplifying exactly the kind of oppression of freedoms that we're referencing. How about we'll quote whoever we want to quote? How about that's my First Amendment right? That's exactly the kind of baked-in oppression. Like, how dare a white Republican quote Martin Luther King? We actually had a congressman say that just now in this committee. Well, thank you, good lady, for once again exemplifying the type of oppression that we stand against. You know I'm right. You know I'm right.
Order. Mr. Higgins has the floor.
And we will quote who we please to quote.
A disgrace.
And we will continue to speak freely because now I'm a veteran. That's the country that I serve. That's a Constitution I swore an allegiance to, and that oath has no expiration date. I will fight for it with my last life's blood.
It's not. Look at the old DEI. Oh, I'm more oppressed than you are. No, you're not. You're a congresswoman in the Senate, not the Senate, but you're a congresswoman in the United States of America. You're an American debating with another American, and just because that American has a different skin color than you, you're saying you can't quote someone that I think is only black people can quote. So you're saying I can't use a language because you deem it to be so because of the color of my skin? And this is what gets you called a racist today, that you want equal standards. An immigrant breaks the law, but because that immigrant happens to be a minority, all of a sudden we got to make special considerations for them because our justice system has unfairly prosecuted these people. When you look at crime statistics, these people just happens to commit most of the crime. That's it. That's the reality. And if we are being fair and say, hey, if you don't want to do the time, don't commit the crime. So if you commit the crime, you have to what? Do the time. Black people, black Democrats specifically, sorry, I don't want to equate all black people into this mess. Black Democrats specifically, they always talk about, oh, we need criminal justice reform because the justice system unfair. Because 13% of the population are overrepresented in jail. But they don't make that same argument about black people in the NBA. How are you 30% of the population, but you make up 78% of the NBA? They don't say that's systematic racism. But only when that disparity happens in a negative outcome, that's when they want to make this outcome. That's when they want to make it all racial. But they don't want to talk about, oh, you got black privilege, when it's the other way around. But for some reason, they want to equate this stuff with white people. Oh, white people, when they're successful, it's because of white supremacy, white privilege. It's easier for you to be successful. How would you feel if someone said, oh, it's easier for a black person to make it to the NBA because of black privilege? Black people won't go for it. How do you feel about these liberals who say that, oh, Americans about to learn how to maintain their own lawns. Many Americans do that. I live in a suburb. When I go outside my house, many people take care of their own lawn. And when we get our lawn cut by a service, it's not by a Mexican person, it's by a rural white guy. But this Jason guy, urban city guy, he thinks, oh yeah, immigrants, of course they handle our labor. Of course they handle our lawn. Of course they clean our houses. You don't clean your own house, liberal? Make home repairs themselves. I do a little home repair. I'm not the most handsy guy, but I do some home repairs when I need to. Grow a home garden. My wife grows a home garden, right? But for real though, the arguments are indistinguishable from pro-slavery arguments in the 1850s. These people exist for our comfort and convenience. That is the mindset of the liberal. Tell me I'm lying. Oh, you failed a math test? When statistics show that black students do less time on homework than other races of people, Asians do more homework compared to other groups of people, and you're surprised why Asians do so well in academia and black people don't, black students don't. End of the day, the outcomes that the black community is getting is not due to suppression or oppression. It's due to actions and behaviors that the community has incentivized and has done at a community level that's giving the outcomes that they have right now. You want equal outcomes, but you don't want to do equal decisions. You don't want to take equal action. Make it make sense. But you want to claim, oh, races, oh, there's a wealth gap. But the average age in the black community is like 30. The average age in the white community is like 55. Don't older Americans make more money than younger Americans usually? Yes. Don't older Americans have more time to accumulate wealth than younger Americans? Yes. So how can you say the wealth gap is due to racism? Couldn't it just be that because white Americans tend to be older, they have more time to technically accumulate wealth than black people? Because since black people is a younger population? I didn't think of it that way. Yes, because liberals, they're very racial. I'll say very racist. But they want to project and say, oh no, conservatives are so racist. Right? And this is the folly of the race hustle. And they wonder why the race hustle ain't don't go the same no more, right?
How do people feel about companies taking even a stand on the issue?
Now, this is where it gets very interesting because here we have a real-time trend. So let's take a look at it, all right? Businesses' DEI public stance. Important to know, back in 2021, so we can go all the way back then, right? Just after the summer of George Floyd, which of course was back in 2020. How important did folks think it was to know the DEI stances of businesses? It was 68%. It was 68%. Look at where we are now in 2024, a real decrease. Just 53% of Americans want to know a business's DEI stance. So what we've seen here is back, right after the summer of George Floyd, there was a lot of interest in DEI, a lot of interest in folks knowing businesses' stances towards DEI. Now, considerably less so in 2024. This is a drop of 15 points. That's a considerable drop. You know, I like looking at poll questions. You oftentimes don't see this type of drop unless there's a real change in public opinion.
That's striking, those numbers. I remember 2021 very well and how important it was to people in the community and, frankly, voters overall. I mean, it's become this issue of DEI and concept a political lightning rod, especially among conservatives, Harry. How do Republicans and Democrats view it?
Yeah, what is driving this decline? It's Republicans. Okay, important to want to know a business's DEI stance. You go back to 2021. Look, there was a partisan divide between Democrats and Republicans. Democrats coming in at 86%, Republicans coming in at 50%. Democrats have basically stayed pretty steady on this issue, right? In 2024, it's 79%, a slight drop, but not so far off from that 86%. Look at Republicans. Look at this drop-off in this number. 50% back in 2021 said it was important to know a business's stance on DEI. Now, it's just 22%. That is a drop of more than half from 2021 to 2024. And that, of course, is mirroring what we're seeing from politicians, from Republicans, folks like Donald Trump. The bottom line is the Republican base on DEI 3 years ago, kind of lukewarm, now in vast opposition to it. They don't want to hear anything from businesses on DEI, and I think that's why you're seeing a lot of businesses differentiating themselves out, saying, you know what, we're taking a step back.
They don't want to acknowledge the negative effects of DEI, right? The studies was conducted by a network contagion research institution in collaboration with Rutgers University and investigated the psychological effect of DEI pathologies, specifically trainings that draw heavily from texts like How to Be a Racist and White Fragility. If you read these books, you're the most fragile person in the world. You're talking about how reverse discrimination cures current discrimination, when the reality is a reverse discrimination creates more discrimination. You want to punish somebody that never done anything personally to you just because they happen to share the same skin color as someone in the past. And you want to piggyback off the struggle and the setbacks, the negativities, the atrocities that happen to people that you happen to share skin color with, and pretend that you're just as much as a victim as they are. Make it make sense. A pretend victim is not the same as an actual victim. Let's call a spade a spade. And this is why reparations have never gone anywhere and probably will never go anywhere. Because what you're effectively asking for is reward me for the suffering of my supposed ancestors. And that is an argument that will never fly in the face of reality. But I digress. Let me know what you guys are thinking about the whole DEI situation. I'm starting to get tired of it. That these people, all they know how to do is talk about racism, right? And then they want to get mad why the country's so divided, why people reject identity politics, because you make identity the foremost thought about someone's existence. When you don't know much, like if someone tells you I'm a black person, that don't tell you nothing about that person. But if that person told you, oh, I'm a conservative, or I'm a Christian, or I'm an atheist, or I'm agnostic, you know more about that person than if they just told you their skin color. And this is the reality of the people. These people, the identity politics crusade, the DEI people, this is why they're losing power. This is why they're losing influence, is that they want you to make you think that race is a determinant of all your outcomes. This is a very fixed mindset way of thinking about things. Oh, because I was born black, I'm predestined for all these outcomes. When the reality is, no, you're not. What decides your outcome is whether you're born in a single-parent household or a two-parent household. And that's a privilege in of itself, but you want to make it about race. When you look at statistics, Black couples have a less propensity for poverty than single people, than single parents of any race. So if white privilege was a thing, wouldn't it mean no matter what situation you put Black people in, they'll be at the bottom? But I just showed you a stat where single mom, single mother, white women do worse off than two married Black people. So what determines the wealth gap? What determines your poverty, your propensity to be in poverty? Your skin color or the actions and decisions that you make? And this has been my guiding thesis throughout my entire life. Your behavior decides your outcomes more than your skin colors. And I think I'll end the video off of that. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate you guys watching to the end of the video. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.